So Alex, where do you see the largest growth for M2M over the course of the next 5 years, both in terms of geographic expansion and industry vertical penetration?
We're seeing a lot of change in this market. Up to 2 years or so ago, it was very verticalized, it was relatively niche applications, and frankly, they were in individual geographic marketplaces. Right. There was very little spillover. And most of the market was still dominated by fleet, asset control, things of that nature. In terms of segments, we're seeing an enormous amount of growth in payment processing, vending, point of sale, banking, in the business-to-business sense, not micro-banking in the consumer sense. And also, quite frankly, a lot in healthcare. And healthcare is particularly interesting because it's a very different dynamic in the first world, which is all about patient outcomes and cost recovery. In the third world, it's about bringing healthcare to communities where health professionals don't exist. So lots of very interesting dynamics in both of those marketplaces.
That's great. So can you elaborate on the added value MVNOs bring to solution providers over incumbent local carriers?
When you go out to multiple markets, it gets a quantum difficulty, not just in terms of managing multiple carrier relationships with different currencies, different integration requirements, different management requirements, but also in security and other related areas. Right. So I think where the MVNOs, the specialist service providers that exist in our marketplace are really coming to their fore is in organizations where more complicated delivery of services actually has a demonstrable balance sheet value to them. It's usually multiple carriers, oftentimes multiple technologies, but it also may be in different applications areas as well. And I think each is actually building a different business model around those.
So what's the biggest challenge M2M solution providers face when deploying a global solution?
Thinking of reliability and in-service serviceability over the life cycle of the device. Right. I mean, there's a lot of talk at the moment about what's happening in technology generations, for example, from 2G to 3G. So you have to think about that, obviously. But then how are you going to service these devices? How are they going to have network upgrades? What's going to be the cost of doing firmware upgrades? Can your provider actually move you to more advantageous service plans? These kind of things need to be taken into account because these are the very, very significant future operating costs of an M2M service, which is likely to have a service life cycle measured in 5, 6, 7, maybe more years. And there's a very different dynamic to doing it in your local market. That's where I think the independent providers can also bring a lot of added value.
So many are holding a single worldwide SIM as the ideal for M2M deployments. Is a global SIM really the best option for companies today?
Either nobody has a global SIM or everybody has a global SIM. I have a global SIM in my iPhone. It comes from a carrier, and I can roam on 400 networks around the world, and I can travel wherever I want to go. The question is, do I want to pay the price that they want to charge me, and do I have the technical support that can give me a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week guarantee of service? The answer to that is it's quite tough. And so the global SIM, I think, is still something of a pipe dream that exists in our industry. And many, many providers are now recognizing that to do a true global coverage, multiple SIMs do genuinely need to be used. Now, there are enabling technologies that are not simply on the horizon. I think they're on the horizon a little bit commercially, but they're not on the horizon technically, and we're working with some in those areas to be able to bring the notion of a single SIM, which is really a single SKU in the manufacturing line, and yet have a portable IMSI on the SIM so that the device can take on the personality of the national or regional network into which it's going to be used into the future. And I think we are not very far away from seeing that as mainstream, which will help in the supply chain.
So when considering making an M2M partnering decision, what are the key criteria, do you think, that enterprises and solution providers alike should consider?
The first is the network provider that you choose is going to be an essential component of the bill of materials of your solution. Right. It's going to have to be there 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 7 years down the line. So, number one is, do they have a reliable environment, which is a quality 5 nines service capability? Are they financially strong? so that they can invest in and develop their businesses as they run forward, and actually match your particular business needs. What are their approaches to new technologies, and not just technologies in terms of communications, but how to actually integrate other applications or other network services into the future. Think carefully about those. At the end of the day, the most important consideration is that the first cost of your device represents maybe a third of the cost of the overall solution. So how is it going to be supported? Can you find human beings that can do that for you 24/7? Carriers can't do that for you. I think the specialist providers have built toolkits and infrastructures to be able to do that. Certainly we at Core have done that,
sure.
And that's been part of the mark of our success, and I think our differentiation in the market.